Welcome to Marketing with Purpose. My name is Monica Pitts. I'm the owner of May Create Design and the tech lady who solves communication challenges through technology. And I have a special interview for you today because this year, while planning my year end fundraising training workshop, I had multiple people mention that they wanted to learn more about steering their teams. They said that they often feel like they're on a team of one, meaning all by themselves trying to get it done. And I've managed a lot of people since starting my business in 2005, but almost all of those people have been paid employees for a reason because it's a lot easier to manage the people that depend on you to earn a living than it is just a board or volunteers who don't get paid for their services. So I felt like I needed some outside expertise. And I thought of Debbie, who helps nonprofit organizations with broken boards, patch them back together into a cohesive unit to support your organization once again. And she's going to explain to us the role your board and volunteers should play in your year end fundraiser, how to reset their expectations to get the most out of your efforts, ways to deal with volunteers and board members who don't feel comfortable asking for money, and how to avoid getting stuck in perpetual planning mode from the get go, and how to get unstuck if you find yourself there. Let's talk to Debbie. You're on a mission and you just need more people to know about it. And whether you're brand new to marketing or a seasoned pro, we are all looking for answers to make marketing decisions with purpose. I'm Monica Pitts, a techie, crafty business owner, mom, and aerial dancer who solves communication challenges through technology. This podcast is all about digging in and going digital. I'll share my marketing know-how and business experience from almost 20 years of misadventures. I'll be your backup dancer so you can stop doubting and get moving towards marketing with purpose. I just have one public service announcement to make before we get to the good stuff today. And you might not like it when I say this, but you know that the secret to a successful year-end giving campaign is to start planning right now. Don't give up and let 2020 get the best of you. The biggest giving month is yet to come. You know that 26% of all the donations placed in 2019 on classy.org happened between Giving Tuesday and December 31st. So don't let those supercharged 31 days go to waste. Download my year-end campaign planning checklist at maycreate.com/checklist. It outlines your monthly must-do activities from September to January with simple, straightforward tasks to guide your planning activities and discussions to get you rolling towards a successful year-end giving campaign. Check it out at maycreate.com/checklist. And with that out of the way, I can't wait to introduce you to my guest. So hi, Debbie, and thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today. I thought we should probably start off by, having you tell us about yourself, what you do, and, how you got there.
Sure. Thanks, Monica, for having me. I am Debbie DiVirgilio, and I'm a nonprofit consultant. So what that means is I do a lot of different things, from starting with organizations that are just getting started, so they're really startups, all the way to those that are performing services and have been around for a long time. And usually they have big budgets. But my heart is really with the small nonprofits that are just getting started. And I've been doing this for, I guess, about 19 years. I started working in the nonprofit field. So from the time I was a little girl, I identified that I wanted to work in nonprofits. I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know what nonprofits were, but I would have described exactly the kind of organizations that I work with. They help people and they do this and they do that. And so I didn't have the language for it, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I went to school, and one of my first semester classes was Introduction to Social Work. And it was like the heavens opened, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what I wanted to do. And it didn't work out for me to major in social work, but I went home and I was like, wow, that's really what I want to do. So my career actually started at a teen pregnancy center. And I did a lot of different things there. I developed programs, I wrote grants, and worked there for about 5 years. And then I moved on to another organization. And every time I left an organization, it was because the dysfunction of the nonprofits just drove me bananas. So I realized that I'm not good with dysfunction. And I said to my husband, I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to become a nonprofit consultant so that I can help organizations really do what they want to do, really fulfill their mission, and throw away all that dysfunctional stuff. Well, obviously, it was a lot harder than I even imagined. And I went back to school. I received a master's in nonprofit management, and I've got all kinds of credentials. So I'm a certified board source trainer. I'm a standards of excellence governance trainer. So those just mean I understand boards and know how to work with boards of directors. I'm also a grant professional. So that means I write grants and get funding, and you know, I've done fundraising, and so you name it, I've covered nonprofits from one end of the spectrum to the other. So that's how I got here, I think.
So I was hoping today that we could focus for our small nonprofits on some of that management and leadership that you have been both experienced in and studying so much in all your certifications. So I wanted to start by voicing something that I've heard a lot of experienced nonprofit leaders say, that they feel like the board has a role to play in your fundraiser, any fundraiser that you do. And they also feel like volunteers have a role as well. So in your opinion, like, what does that role look like?
So I think it's going to vary for each organization. And it's also going to vary on the type of fundraiser. If we're talking about the end of year giving campaign, so it's an annual campaign, that's going to be very different than say a gala or a golf tournament. But the board, at the very, very minimum, should be connecting the organization with people in the community. And really, that goes back to your board recruitment process. So if you can get your board recruitment right, then you're going to have all these ambassadors in your board who are really pointing to people to your organization who want to get involved and want to help you. But if you're asking that question, you're probably not in that position right now, right? You probably have a board that maybe you haven't talked to about fundraising, and so you're probably a little frustrated with them. In which case, usually you're going to have to sit down with your board, and often this is done best by a consultant, because it's not my boss. They're not going to be my boss or any consultant's boss, right? But it's really challenging for the executive director to sit down and say, you guys aren't doing your job, when they're the ones who decide if he or she has a job. Mm-hmm. So it will help if you can get a champion on your board to really talk about the board's role in fundraising. Now, that doesn't mean that the board has to do it all. What it means is they have a role. So perhaps the first thing is for the executive director or president, depending on the size of the organization, if there is no executive director, is to really determine what they want the board to do. Because what I have found so often is that board members, they're not sure what the executive director wants them to do. So you need to get that clear in your mind so that you can define it for them. And then, as I said, that will look different for every organization. So sometimes, executive directors want board members to be very involved, and other times they don't. So you need to have that discussion. Mm-hmm. The other thing, though, that's a challenge, and this is a sort of an aside from the conversation that we're having, but it's one I think that people need to hear and they need to think about. And that is filling your board with warm bodies, because you need to fill a board seat, is what's getting you into trouble. Because I can't tell you how many people have come to me and they have said, Debbie, we just need board members. If they are warm body, if their heart beats, we want them. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because if you have a board member who is not committed to the work and the mission of your organization, mm-hmm. that's all you're going to get is a warm body. And other people will say, no, Debbie, we just want the rich people in our community to serve on our board. Oh. And again, I would say, no, you don't. Because if somebody has money, whether they could give you $100,000 or $1 million, they're not going to do it if they're not connected to your mission. Mm-hmm. So our money, and I'm sure you can identify this in your own life. Our money follows where our hearts are, right? If we have kids, we know all of our money seems to follow our kids. We end up spending it all on our kids. And it's the same way with organizations and board members. So it would be to your benefit to get board members who are passionate about the work you're doing, and maybe they don't have quite the means to give large gifts, but in the end, you're going to get more out of them. So that's what I mean when I say it all starts with recruitment and how you're looking at filling board seats.
So it sounds like with your end of year fundraiser, you have to define what role you want your board to play and then make sure that you share that expectation with them so that way they could actually work to fulfill it for you.
That's right.
But do you think the same goes for your volunteers? Do they play the same type of role or different from your board in your year-end fundraising?
That's a really good question, Monica. When I think about so many organizations don't take advantage of the volunteers they have when it comes to success, end of year fundraising. So if you think about it, your volunteers are already giving their time and their effort to support your work. They're your number one candidates to help with your fundraising because they already know all about the work, right? And so many organizations are not asking for their help. And so I would encourage organizations to sit down, plan it out, have a volunteer appreciation or just a volunteer luncheon or something where you bring all the volunteers in, you let them know what's going on and your plans for the coming months, and then get them involved, come up with ways. What could you use them to do? How can they help you? Because like I said, if they're volunteering their time, they're already interested in your work. And so you already have sort of a lot of it under your belt with them, so to speak.
Do you feel like your end of year plan would start with the strengths of your volunteers, or do you put the plan together and then kind of try to put the volunteers in the puzzle pieces?
That's a really good question. I would say start with your plan. So one of the challenges that I've seen so many organizations do is maybe they've never done an end of year giving campaign. And suddenly they say, this year is it, we're going to do it. And we're going to raise $50,000. And then they get discouraged because they raise 5,000 and they say, oh, it's not worth it. So I want to tell everybody that the first thing is to lay out a plan and be realistic. If we go back to SMART goals, right, they have to be realistic, because if you've never done this before, it's going to take several years to build it, but every year it will get better. So you've got to start somewhere. And if you can get 5,000, if you can get $1,000, it's probably worth it for you to keep going. And it's a really good thing that we're talking about this now, because so many organizations wait until December 1st. And then it's like, no, you don't have time. So start now and begin planning it out and setting some realistic expectations for everybody involved.
I do hear a lot of the times people feeling, I don't know, the note in their voice, the tone feels like they're almost victimized by the expectations of their board, or it could be their boss. It might be that their expectations are unrealistic with time. It could, because especially as a designer, I get that all the time. I just had a client come to me the other day and they were like, okay, we're going to do this event in a week and we need to do an online raffle and we need to do an online stream. And I was like, friend, I love you. And no, like, there's no way we're pulling that all up, because not only do I have to build it all, I also have to market it all. And it takes time for me to get that message disseminated out to people so they'll actually do something,
That's right.
So I feel like I hear that from people all the time. They're like, man, these people, they have unrealistic expectations of me. And I know that you're saying, set those expectations from the beginning, but what happens like if they're kind of midstream, right? They already have their board, the board's in place. Do you have any suggestions on how you might set goals, set expectations now, like kind of midstream?
Yeah. So if you're kind of stuck right now because you have what you have, right? So sit down with the board and have an honest conversation and just talk to them and let them know, okay, this end of year giving campaign, just because XYZ nonprofit down the road raised $50,000 last year doesn't mean it's realistic for us. Sometimes I think nonprofits can become so competitive because they look over somebody else's fence, right? They're like, oh, well, they're doing this and they're doing this, so we should be able to do it. And I'm going to tell you that it takes a lot of building. So really sit down with your board and say, okay, this is where we are today. And you're going to have an honest conversation and say, this is where we are today. If our goal is to get to 50,000, that might be a realistic goal for us 3 years from now. But in the meantime, what steps can we take? And part of that is getting the board to understand why they need to give you their connections, why they need to fill out this little paper, which gives you their name, their address, their email, so that they will stay in, so you can contact their friends and their family, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to make sure that they understand how important it is that you get their support.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would also say, and this sort of feels like it's starting over, but it's not really, is to sit down with the board and talk about, particularly with the board president, he or she will have to help you implement this, to start setting some board expectations every year. So every year the board would sign a document that's called board expectations, and they're making a commitment. I'm going to participate in X number of fundraisers. I'm going to participate in X number of events. This is what I'm going to do, so that your board knows right up front. Because I'm going to say, from the other side of the coin, I hear from boards also,
Mm-hmm.
that boards say, well, we feel like we were bamboozled into this and nobody told us, I was just told come an hour a month.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not really sure what they're supposed to do either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we have to look at it from both sides to really understand, okay, yes, these are busy people. This is not their full-time job, but they have a lot to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I, as a nonprofit leader, help them to contribute in ways that will benefit my organization?
Mm-hmm. One of the challenges I know I've personally had when being on committees and even like board committees is that if we're not working on a deadline, things sometimes just don't get done. It's like the event gets done and it gets planned because there's like a date that you set for it and it has to happen.
That's
But
right.
like if it's something like we're going to write new bylaws or we're going to have, put it together a new filing system or whatever it is, it feels like that committee like gets created and then we're very excited at first, and then poof, like stuff just kind of fizzles somehow. And I mean, I just heard last week, one of my clients was complaining because she's a volunteer in charge of a fundraiser and she just felt like nothing was getting done. So she's like in that position, right?
Mhm.
Are there, I mean, like, what are some ways that you might suggest to like avoid this situation and then maybe get the ball rolling again?
Yeah, it does happen a lot. And I think everybody's well intentioned. I don't think anybody does it on purpose. It just happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is that we recruit busy people to be on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're always trying to juggle, right? When I get this done, then I can move to this. And when I get this done, I can move to that. But one of the best things that you can do for any fundraising campaign is sit down and lay out a calendar,
Mm-hmm.
lay out all of your dates. When do we need this? When do we need this? When do we need this? Okay, then who's responsible? So you're actually assigning responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Along with that, I would encourage you, and again, this sort of goes into the board development things, but bring people on in a committee capacity, because then you're going to be able to see if they really follow through before you put them on your board.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of test driving them is what you're doing. Do they have great ideas and then everything fizzles? Or do they really follow through, and do they get along well with people? So sit down, work out your calendar. So right now, here we are, what is it? The beginning of September.
Mm-hmm.
So sit down and map it out. When do we have to have this letter written? When is it going to go in the mail? When are we going to send a follow-up? Are we going to send a follow-up?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to print the letter in-house? Are we going to send it to a printer? Are we going to stuff the envelopes in-house? Or are we going to send them out to a service that will do that for us? So all of those things, you're mapping them out now so that you can see how that fits into your overall organizational calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, ideally, you want to develop this whole calendar at the beginning of the year,
Mm-hmm.
right? For the whole organization. So you can see, oh, we have a golf tournament here and we have this here. And then you can pull it all together.
Yeah. That's
the ideal.
That's ideal. I feel like it's so hard because people, they get overwhelmed and, they want to do it all, this whole big thing right now. And
Mhm.
what I'm really trying to encourage everyone to do is just take a deep breath and realize that you have what you have and you can use it to get where you want to go. Just like you said, like, where are we going to go this year? Where can we go next year? Where can we go the following year? Because just like with your fundraising, your marketing is a step-by-step process too.
Mhm.
Like, you have to develop the processes so you can use them year after year. They don't just
That's right.
magically appear, right?
Yep.
And yeah, so it's cool that you said that, because that is exactly what we do at the beginning of every single project for every single client is
Yeah.
map out all of the steps. And then we put the amount of time it's going to take to do them too, which is, I know, going like way deep, but it helps because then I understand, can we even get this done in the time frame that they want it done in? Because
Mhm.
otherwise I'm not going to be doing you a very good service by telling you I can do something when I really can't.
That's right. Well, and what happens is if we don't sit down and map it out completely, ultimately we find we've left out some really important step.
Hmm.
And then we're like scrambling, trying to figure out how this is going to actually happen, whether it's the printing or even the proofing, right? Sometimes we forget that we need to proofread our letters, and you have some fatal error in your writing. So
Yeah.
take the time and do those things, map it out completely. The nice thing is once you get the template
Hmm.
of all of the steps and all the activities, next year all you have to do is change the dates, so
Hmm.
you're good.
Yeah, we make ours in a spreadsheet so that way you can really easily change the dates.
Yep.
And even too, like once you have all those emails written or your letter written, then you have a spot to start next year. I'm not saying that you need to send the exact same things year after year, but I do find that when I'm going to create a new campaign, I start with the last campaign. And I
Hmm.
think, what did I learn from this email? Did it work? Did it not work?
Hmm.
What was good about it? And then I try to build from there. It's just easier for me than starting from scratch, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, one last question for you. Well,
Okay.
actually, maybe two last questions for you, but this one's kind of a biggie. So, I do hear from a lot of people that their volunteers or board are very resistant to asking for money. And part of me just gets like real fired up. I'm like, "Rawr!" Because I'm like, do they not understand the amazing things that you do? Maybe we need to go back to point A and revisit that. Um, so my question to you is, I mean, clearly you probably don't go all crazy honey badger on them like I want to do, but like, what would you say in this situation? Do you try to change their mind, or do you just focus on utilizing their talents to promote your campaign?
So I've done both.
Okay.
And sometimes, depending on the personality of someone, you do just want to use their talents, right?
Hmm.
You know that you're never going to be able to get them to the point where they could ask someone for money. But other times, it's a matter of really helping them to understand that you're giving someone an opportunity to participate. See, we often think about asking for money as as though we're asking for it personally.
Hmm.
If I needed, let's say I needed lunch and I asked someone for money, that would make me very uncomfortable. And so we get in this mindset that we can't ask people for money because they'll think we're asking for it for ourselves.
Hmm.
However, if you change your thinking, and this is definitely an education process to help board members see that you're giving people an opportunity to participate in something that really matters,
Hmm.
that opens up a whole new world, right? And then in today's world, we have a great way of being able to get people involved in asking for money without them really even asking. And we should be teaching them how to maximize their social media,
Hmm.
because that's an easy way.
Hmm.
The key is that when you get your volunteers to do those things for you, you've got to find a way to capture their names, the names of the people who donate, their email, and that sort of thing, so that you're constantly building your database. And I'm hearing from a lot of people right now that suddenly they're realizing, oh, Debbie, we didn't listen to you. We haven't been building our list for years,
Hmm.
and now we're in a hard spot.
Hmm.
So whatever you can do, even if you don't raise a lot of money on your year-end giving campaign, but you're working to build that list, you're putting yourself in a better position.
Hmm.
So constantly think about how you can increase your list. In other words, how you can add people to your database so that you can continue educating them and informing them about the work the organization's doing.
I do. And the cool thing about like Facebook, for example, is let's say you have a board member who is, or a volunteer who isn't comfortable making an ask for money, but they are comfortable with sharing a Facebook post. Well,
Right.
they can share your post. And then if their friends comment on or like that post, then your organization through a little Facebook app is capable then of asking them to like or follow your page, which is cool because then you have the opportunity to talk to them more often or even ask them for their email address down the road. So like that can do a lot of good for you. It can build a lot of momentum for you, and it's something that's very passive. They don't have to ask. They can just share,
Right.
and that feels
Well,
so
and the
different.
other thing is that what I've heard some people say actually is, wow, that organization, I didn't know they existed and they're doing some really cool things.
Mhm.
How could you not tell me about them?
Yeah.
Right? Because we always share when we are involved in exciting things, it's quite natural for us to share.
Hmm.
And so that's what we need to look at fundraising as. We're just sharing. We're just sharing what's going on in our communities. Because you know what? In every community in America right now, we are really focused on trying to make them better. And that's what nonprofits do.
Hmm. Agreed, 100%. That's why we decided years ago that we weren't just going to make one flyer for one golf tournament. We were going to support the community foundation and work with them on Como Gibbs, because that meant we could help do more good than just that little golf tournament flyer could ever do.
Yeah,
So that's why we're here today, right?
that's right.
So any last advice, either in team management or maybe just a nugget of goodness that you feel like people should stay focused on as the giving season will wrap up in 2020?
So this is directly related to the giving season. A lot of people will say, well, when should we mail our letters? And I'm going to tell you, the research says that your letters need to be in people's hands on the Friday after Thanksgiving. So tuck that away and use that as your starting point now to back up your timeline, right? As you set dates and all the activities that have to go to get you there. So essentially, you're mailing the letter on probably Monday or Tuesday of that Thanksgiving week.
Awesome. That is just in time for Giving Tuesday.
That's
Yay!
right.
That is so fun. Well, thank you so much, Debbie. I really appreciate all your time. And I know that all the nonprofits listening will definitely learn a thing or two from you. Can you let them know how to contact you if they want to learn more about your services?
Sure. Available by email at Debbie at non-profit, PROFIT, consultant.com. And our website is www.non-profitconsultant.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know, as awesome as all of these free resources and group learning can be, that sometimes you need just a little bit more attention and one-on-one planning help to sit down and figure out just where to start your year-end campaign. I'm offering a limited number of half-price one-on-one consulting sessions. Schedule between September 28th and October 9th, and your one-on-one 1-hour consulting session will be half off. So that's usually $90 and it's marked down to $45. So to sign up for your session, go to consulting.maycreate.com to reserve your spot today. Now, if you are ready to start planning for 2021, join us for the beta session of our nonprofit marketing management fundamentals course as I guide a small group of nonprofits through our signature marketing planning program later this fall. Now, for the beta release, all sessions will be presented live with Q&A sessions afterwards for real feedback. I want to know what you need from me, and I want to answer your questions live in this beta release. So together we'll plan your marketing so you can get back to doing what matters most, growing your mission and making an impact on your community. Join the waitlist now at youmaycreate.com/fundamentals. Once again, that's youmaycreate.com/fundamentals. Together, I know that we can make these last few months of 2020 the best part of this year. And with that, my friends, go forth and market with purpose.